Welcome, everybody. It's time once again for the next chapter with Charlie Hedges, as he explores turning the page on his life and yours.
Hi there. Welcome, friends, to the next chapter with Charlie. It's so good to have you with us. My very special guest today is Ash Perrow, an Australian coach, musician, and near-death experience survivor. He is, now catch this, he's an explorer of consciousness and an expert on living a nurturing life. We were a nourishing life, and I probably nurturing as well. But Ash has coached hundreds of clients to lead fulfilling, creative, loving, and purposeful lives. With that, let's let the show begin. Ash Perrow, welcome to the next chapter with Charlie.
Thank you so much, Charlie. It's an absolute honor to be here with you.
Oh, thank you. That's kind of you to say that. You know, I'll see if you say that at the end of the show.
Well, I have no doubt. We're going to have a wonderful conversation.
That's wonderful. Look, Ash, I'm both fascinated and impressed by the soul-searching journey you are on these days. Not only have you invested a boatload of effort in developing yourself, but you've also created ways to help other people as well. Now, the journey you traverse today is more of a recent one, sort of recent in that it began around 2016. And at that time, you experienced a life-altering event that shaped your understanding of the power of healing, self-trust, and resilience. I'm interested. Tell me how this journey began with you.
So in 2016, I went into hospital for a back operation. And during the surgery, the surgeons tore a vein and they weren't aware that the vein had torn. And so the vein was actually lower down in my groin where I couldn't see. And the next morning, I was in my hospital bed and the physio came in and said, "We're going to get you up for rehab." And so sit on the edge of the bed. I'd been in a lot of pain that night. And I sat on the edge of the bed and I looked down at my leg and my thigh was about twice the size of what it normally was.
Goodness.
Yeah. And the physio says, "Oh, don't worry, you'll be fine. Just hop up." And I said to him, my leg's not normally like that. He's like, "You'll be fine." And so I stood up and then straight away I collapsed back on the bed. I wasn't able to breathe. He pressed the red emergency button next to the bed. The siren went off. I could hear the siren going off. The emergency team ran in. And then they started putting the oxygen mask on me. And I was thinking, I'll be okay. I'll be okay.
Sure.
And then I could hear them speaking about me. And it was one of those experiences where there was such a depth of awareness. I was very aware of what was happening. And in reflection, it was like, I went into like this observer mode. You know, I was able to see what was happening, but there wasn't like this is happening to me. And so they're saying he's not breathing and we can't attach the ECG monitors because he's bathed in cold sweat. And I could feel like this cold sweat all over my body. And eventually they got the ECG monitors on and they said he hasn't got a pulse, he's not breathing. And so still I'm thinking, I'll be okay. And then I hear them say...
And you're seeing this as an observer. You're not really feeling it yourself. This is like you're watching it from the outside.
I'm still in it, but there was a detachment. There was a detachment. So I wasn't experiencing lots of pain. I was but hyper aware of where everybody was in the room, what they were saying. And once they said his blood pressure is 52 on 36. And I thought, oh, this is serious. Right? You know, even though they're attaching ECG monitors and oxygen masks, I'm still not going, oh, this is serious. It was only when I heard the blood pressure, I was like, oh, okay, this is serious. And then it kept going and they started saying, "Stay with us, Ash, keep your eyes open." And I couldn't. I was starting to fade. And I thought to myself, oh, I'm dying. This is dying. And then I had this thought and this immense sadness. I thought, no one I love is in the room. I'm dying and no one I love is here. And I just felt this immense, immense sadness. And then a last piece, just before I blacked out, I saw the physio, who's very young, straight out of college, standing in the corner of the hospital room. And he was just so pale, and I thought, oh, you poor guy, you think you've killed me. And then I blacked out. And so instead of just blacking out like you do when you faint, my experience was everything went to black, but I became ripples. And I became these ripples just going out infinitely. And there was no separation. I was aware, I could think. And so that's how I would describe conscious awareness, is that, without the body, we are consciousness. There's something that I experienced without my body. And I was the ripples were me at the same time. There was no separation there. And so we just...
Oh, cool.
Yeah, a phenomenal experience.
I mean, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, phenomenal experience. Troubling on many levels, like the recovery and the physical recovery and things like that later on. But I just kept going out and out and out. And I was so surprised that I was me. There was this sense of, oh, I'm me. I thought when I die, I would become an enlightened Buddha or something, but I was me. And so there was...
you were thinking you had died.
Yeah. I knew this was death. I knew this was my experience of death. And I just thought, oh, I'm me. Oh. And I had no physical pain at all. And there was no emotional pain. The sadness had passed. It was just like as I was in the process of going to the other side that I had that emotional pain, and then there was none on the other side. But what I did have was a longing to stay. And I started to say, I want to stay. And the ripples were still going out and out and out. And then I said, well, I want to stay for my partner. And the ripples were going out and out. And I was still thinking, I'm dying. This is dying. Okay. And then I said, I want to stay for the kids. And so we had a blended family, and I want to stay for the kids. And I was still going out and out and out. And then I felt this warmth, and I said, I want to stay for the work that I do and walk the planet from my heart. And the instant that expression was made real or obvious to me, straight back into my body, opened my eyes. I heard them say, we've got a pulse, he's breathing, his eyes are open, and a level 11 physical pain, extraordinary physical pain. So I started moaning, started screaming because the pain was so severe, because I'd lost so much blood and it was pressing on my organs. But at the same time, so grateful to be back in the room, so grateful to be alive.
When you said you had this desire to serve other people, help other people, or do something in your life that meant, was that coming from you? Do you feel like that came from your internal, or was that some outside source giving you information on that?
Great question. I think that was my soul, right? The pattern in my life was I would be the martyr, right? That I would do everything for everybody else, put myself last, which meant my health was very poor, which meant that I wasn't very happy in my life, even though externally people would think that I was very happy. Internally, life was very, 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 very challenging. So I'd had PTSD and severe depression and adrenal fatigue. And so in that process of dying, I wasn't saying I wanted to stay for me. I was saying I wanted to stay for everybody else. Yeah. And so I feel like there was this part where the conditioning dropped away and my true self came in and said, no, I want to stay to walk the planet from my heart and for the work that I do. And so that was very, very, very different place to come from.
That's wonderful. What an extraordinary experience. How long did that last?
I have no idea. I haven't asked. When I talked to the surgeon and I said, I almost died. And he said, oh, no, we knew you were going to be okay. You gave us a bit of a fright, but we knew you were going to be okay. And I also spoke to a friend of mine who's worked in emergency for over 20 years, and he said, you went just as close as you could possibly go. He said, he was like, I'm so happy you're still here because you could not have gone any closer. It's
really interesting what your soul was telling you. I studied the late medieval Christian mystics, and so I'm really into mysticism and heartfelt and messages from the divine, and that is the desire to love and serve other people is so strong with the mystics. It's, people think the mystics are just about, contemplation and, gazing at their navel and divining the divine. And the message from the divine is to serve, is to love. It's all about expressions of goodness, and it's love. And so that's so nice to hear you say that, because that really resonates with my theology.
Yeah, and the piece I was missing was that I wasn't serving or loving myself. So I have a cup here, right? I was trying to serve people, help people from an empty cup.
Yes.
It wasn't working.
Yes.
Whereas now, after that experience and after 8 years, almost 9 years of learning to change my conditioning, so, okay, when I come from a full cup, I can easily serve others. It doesn't take energy. It gives me energy. Whereas before I had such low energy, it was very difficult to keep serving.
I love it. I love it. So Ash, you had this, it's interesting on this NDE, you had more than a fascinating experience, more than a story to tell people. You had a life-changing event that you found you had to love yourself to take care of yourself, and then you could care for others. What does that look like now? What does your purpose in life look like now?
So my purpose in life is to listen to my heart. And from that place, then I can serve. Right? And so my purpose is to be myself, share myself, fundamentally. And it's a bit abstract, but that was, as I was said that I want to stay for the work that I do and walk the planet from my heart, there was a bit of a download that happened, like a few images. I didn't get a manual, but it was just like a bit of a download. And part of that was be yourself, share yourself, which is how we're having this conversation, right? For me, it's fulfilling the contract. I was given a second life because I said, I want to stay for the work and walk the planet from my heart. And so there's questions. How do I live from my heart? What's my work? That has been this constant companion with me since the experience. And that has led me to go from being a school teacher, and there was lots of aspects I loved about teaching, but I had wanted to stop teaching from the second year. And I had stuck with it for 22 years.
Oh, my.
Right? There's part of the motto, right? Always giving, always giving.
Yeah.
And in January 2020, I said, okay, I'm done. I'm not teaching anymore. And I quit. I resigned, and I thought, okay, I'm going to go play music professionally, which I'd done a couple of times before. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go to Canada, spend 3 months on the road. I'm going to do all these things. And then, of course, March 2020 came about and we had a pandemic. Every gig cancelled, everything off the table. Oh, my goodness. And I just had this conviction, I'm not going back to being a school teacher. And so that has driven me since. It's like, okay, my commitment to myself is not to go back to being a school teacher. And then what happened was I would just have, I've always helped people. There's always been people come to me and ask about or share what's happening in their life. I wasn't comfortable giving advice. I don't like advice giving. And then the opportunity came up to do a coaching course, and I thought, oh, you ask questions. Oh, that sounds interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't have to have all the answers. You just help them find the answers that are already within them. Okay. So I did the course, and that was just so I wasn't giving my friends advice. And then something unexpected happened where I had a coach to help me get started in my coaching business. And he said, I want you to put a video of your near-death experience on your website. You telling the story. It doesn't have to be fancy. Just say it to the camera. I was so resistant. Like, I don't want to do that. Yeah. And I was afraid of people judging me.
Sure.
Yeah. And it wasn't something that I had shared much about publicly. And I thought, okay, well, people are going to think I'm crazy. People are going to judge me, stay away from me.
Mm-hmm.
So I recorded the video. The only way I could get it on my website was to embed it from YouTube, which I didn't know at the time. So I recorded it after a few weeks of resistance and the coach coaching me through that. And I put it up on YouTube, and it just started just going crazy. There's people messaging me. I ended up getting clients, and then I got asked to be on podcasts, and then I got more clients from being on the podcast. So in the blink of an eye, I had a coaching business, and it was all just from sharing my story, which I was so resistant to doing.
Oh, what a beautiful story. I was thinking when you told me about coaching and coaching having to do with asking questions, you know what I did? I was, for a living, I was an executive coach before I retired. And my last, 5 or more years, I was an executive coach to 5 different CEOs of very large companies, like billion-dollar companies. And I am not an advice giving either. I think, who am I to give advice? But you know what I do? I'm a curious man. I'm a very curious man. So what I changed my title with these CEOs, and instead of executive coach, I called myself partner in thought. And I think, isn't that more of a role of a coach? Don't you like that, to be a partner in thought?
Yeah, I love that, Charlie. What a magnetic description. Just beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. Let me tell you, I thought, well, I have a handful of questions that I can't wait to discuss, and ranging from focus on the heart and healing to authenticity and dealing with your loud inner critic. But I also thought it might be fun to see where your heart is today. And so I want to ask for the next phase of our session together, what message do you feel in your heart is most essential for our listeners today? The
phrase that came straight to mind is trust yourself. There's so much time that we spend doubting ourselves. And that coming from that place of inner trust, that when we trust ourselves, we connect to our inner strength. When we connect to our inner strength, we're more likely to trust ourselves again. And it's like this little part of us is testing out in the world all the time. Can I trust myself? Can I trust myself? And if we stay in doubt, we don't test it out. And so we can evolve much, much faster. We can create what we want much, much, much faster if we can connect to the inner trust and not be in doubt. And so just a little sidestep on that, the heart, that's the guide, right? So if the mind is the tool for doing the heart's work, the gut is the instinctual, get out of here, this doesn't feel right. But the heart, in stillness, in presence, in nature, in those moments where we feel like ourselves, it could be being when we're creating things, in our heart, there's a message. It's like the intuition, people call it intuition or inner guidance. It's like when we can connect to that and then take actions from the heart, we don't have to doubt what the heart is, what its wisdom is. It's kind, it's compassionate, it's patient, it's loving. The mind, it's going to be brutal, right? It's going to be highly judgmental, highly impatient, highly critical. And so that trusting yourself, doing that's living from the heart.
I love that. As a matter of fact, it's awkward to title a show before you do it, but I've already titled the show calling it "Let Your Heart Be Your Guide." That was one of the first. That was one of the first sentences that you told me when we first chatted a few days ago on the phone, and you used that phrase that really resonates with me. So when you're talking about trust, It's trust yourself, but a lot of that really is trust your heart, isn't it? Trust the messages of your heart.
Which can come from, for me, from our soul, or it also comes from the loving beings that exist that we can't see, right? Like the loving Wi-Fi that's around us, right? We can't see Wi-Fi, but here we are having a conversation because of Wi-Fi that works. And it's the same for me, with loving beings, that they're tuning into us and giving us messages. Hey, go this way. And there's a past version of me that would not listen to this podcast because of the crazy guy talking about loving beings giving messages. But my experience is that's the truth.
I don't think that's a crazy being. And as the response you have is, I don't think a lot of people in the world think that's a crazy being either. Love is so essential. And it's I'm writing a book now titled A History of Love. Before the beginning, there was love, and that the divine is a body of love. That is what the divine is, the created. And so that's instilled in our heart, that's instilled in our soul, is that love. So I agree with you. I'm going to go to one of my questions now that I really, you kind of explained it when you talked about your NDE, but you wrote that you are an explorer of consciousness and an expert on living a nourishing life. So I'm curious, really, you had an exploration of consciousness in your NDE, but tell me, what does it mean to explore consciousness? I know, I'm very Jungian, and so I read a lot about exploring the unconscious, but not the conscious. That's, that we don't talk about that a lot, I don't think.
So in this conversation, I'll put it as a question, if that's okay.
Please.
In this conversation, it's like, have you experienced moments of deep presence?
Deep presence? Yeah. Of us together, of this reality of what we are doing together? Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I feel a connection between you and I that's very strong. And so, and that's a feeling. That's a feeling. It's not measurable.
Yes. And so when we're in that conscious state, there's the feeling that's associated with it. It's like, we might feel an expansion in the chest. We might feel an expansion in the mind. Sometimes people will say, I feel bigger than my body. Right? That's coming from conscious awareness. The mind, it can be like this tight pinpoint in between our eyebrows, right? If I'm worrying in life, that's tight, right? If I'm trying to, inverted commas, work things out and problem solve, but I'm coming from a place of fear, this is where the thought process is. If I'm coming into a place of conscious awareness and trust, the actual experience, the feeling, is expansion.
I love it. And you know what else I really love that came from your NDE, and I think I experience it in life. It's just something, it is sort of a detachment from life, is where at moments when I'm contemplating, it's almost like an out-of-body experience where I am observing me in action. I observe me and I observe how other people are. And so I'm kind of a third party in the relationship. And that's brilliant. That's so insightful. Is that exploring the consciousness?
Absolutely. And I think another way that can be described is knowing the inner warrior. Right? Because when we've become so comfortable with discomfort, right? So when we've gone through deep challenges and had things happening in our life, we experience the inner warrior. Oh, I didn't think I could get through that. Or I realized that I just had to keep showing up step after step after step, and I got through it. And so then when challenge comes up again, we can go through step after step, but we know that we're going to get through it. And that creates a deeper presence because we know that we're going to get through it.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah, I really get that. And it's, I feel fortunate that I'm able to have that experience. It gives me so much insight. And I think, it's just right on the same page as what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. I was just looking around my studio because I was thinking a book that you or your listeners might like is called The Art of Contemplation by Richard Rudd.
Oh, I might have read it. I've read Richard Rudd.
Yeah. Yeah, the Gene Keys.
Isn't he the Gene Key guy? Yeah. And I've listened to music by him. Oh yes, I think I have read that. I've read through the Gene Keys. Yeah. And I have music from them. I don't know if you know, there's an album. Have you ever heard this album by him? It's a meditative album he gives talk about consciousness to just wonderful music background. It's just, it's so delightful. It's brilliant. It's brilliant.
Yeah, he's a living master without a doubt.
Is he?
He has the best weekly newsletter that I have ever experienced. And what he does is he sends you an audio each week of one of the Gene Keys. So the Gene Keys are kind of like a life path kind of aspects or aspects of our personality that we can either be in suffering in or we can be thriving in.
Right.
And he sends about a 15 to 20 minute clip. It's well worth just going to his website and joining his newsletter just to hear the phenomenal wisdom that he shares. It's this week's one was moving from the victim to freedom. And the main perspective for me was that if we are in suffering, it's because we're in victim. Freedom is being free of the victim fundamentally and being okay with all that is. And so that just really landed with me this week around, okay. So when I'm in worry, when I'm in suffering, that's the victim. Okay. All right. And beautiful inquiries to have just to help frame, because life can be so challenging. Just having these little inquiries to frame and help us navigate with presence of what's happening in life, it can change everything.
And that leads me to something else you wrote, and I think, right, just what you just said leads me to this question. You talk about you're talking about how to rewrite your story and break free from these limitations and these worries. How do I rewrite my story? I love that. What does that mean?
Well, you might have heard this somewhere else before, but it's like trusting yourself. Taking each step. It's like, okay, this person came into my field, or I heard about this therapist, or I heard about this book, or whatever it might be. I'm going to trust myself and explore that. Actually, I am going to go see that person, that mystic that I heard about, or whatever it might be. And so trusting oneself, then you go, okay, there's this cycle that we go through. I trusted myself. Things worked out okay. I'm going to trust myself again. And once again, it creates that momentum. Did I answer your question there?
Yes, you did. And I must be odd because I don't know. I think I must have pretty much always trusted myself. I'm a go with the gut person. I score on the instruments. I score a thinker, a left brain person, but I really am right brain. I really am about symbols and images and feelings. And if I get a desire to do something, I just do it. There's so many things I've done in my life, man. At 20, I hitchhiked around the country for 3 months with 3 guys. And we went all across, but those were 3 hippies in the late 60s and early 70s. And, that was just one thing, but I get a feeling I want to do that. And I just do it. I don't ask permission. I don't just say, "What do you think about it?" I just go out and do it. And if it turns out bad, which it rarely does, it's just time to try something else.
Yeah, and I love that point of view, right? Life is for adventuring. There's a
Oh, it
reason we have a
is.
physical body. There's a reason we have such an amazing planet. And it's easy to get stuck in the four walls of our home or of our town or whatever it might be. But it's like, okay, it's actually easier to go out and experience life in the unknown and
Uh-huh.
experience the vitality and the fullness of life by doing things that are out of our comfort zone. It's like, how do people get strong and muscly? Well, by pushing their muscles to the limit. How
Right.
do people get
Right.
super intelligent? By constantly taking in information, pushing themselves. How do people create amazing businesses and products and connections with people? By constantly putting themselves out of that comfort zone, because the comfort zone actually, as you would be aware, right? The comfort zone can become so constrictive, but then there can be, for a lot of people, and this used to be me, and at times it still comes up, right? It's like I'm not some perfect human being that doesn't have a human experience, but it's like, okay, the comfort zones become constrictive. Oh, guess what? It's time to look at where I'm holding back. What am I not stepping into? What is my heart calling me to do? And what am I avoiding? Right? There's the suffering. I'm avoiding something because my heart is saying, hey, go this way, go this way. And I'm like, no, 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 no. I'm going to be in suffering and not take up the challenge.
Yeah, and isn't that comfort zone? Isn't that what that comfort zone is, that safe place, that it's not a risky place. And it's that safe place that I don't have to be fearful of people's opinions, of failing. If I stay in my comfort zone, I know it's about control, isn't it? It's about
Mm,
control. And at some point, we have to give up control. We have to give up the desire to control.
yeah, yeah. And what if we were able to be comfortable in any situation?
Certainly a goal. Look,
Yeah.
we had a little trouble, as the listeners know, in the beginning of the podcast with some internet issues, and so I think, I'm looking at my timing. I think it's time for a break. So let's take a break, and we'll be back in less than a minute. Hi, this is Charlie Hedges, and you're listening to the next chapter with Charlie. And my very special guest and fun guest is Ash Perrow, so insightful. And we've talked about his life expansion post a near death experience and how his life has changed radically and for the positive after he had a chance to observe and become, tell me if this is right, more in tune with your consciousness and where your heart is, more in tune with the heart. And I like that a lot. Does that summarize you well?
Absolutely. And that it's a practice, not a perfection. Right.
Oh, the whole perfect thing, I that drives me nuts. That just, you know, yeah, I love in Genesis, in the Bible, when God does creation and God does each day, God doesn't see that it was perfect. God sees that it was good, and good is good. It needs no greater word. There's no greater word than good. And so, we don't need to be perfect. We just need to be good to the degree that we can.
Mm. And if we keep showing up, it becomes like a level of perfection that people can't comprehend.
Yeah, it does. It does. Well, without
Mm.
being perfect.
That's right, because the what's his name? You might know. It's a French philosopher from the maybe the 18th century, trilliard circles or something like that. And he talks about that we have our I'm going to paraphrase and modernize it a bit, but we have our skill set where we start from. We have a knowledge of what's possible. And so as our skill set improves, our knowledge of what's possible also advances, right? And they only ever meet in flow state. So when they're together, we're not, and what happens is in the gap between what our current skill set and what we think is possible, in the gap, there can be two things. There can be doubt and imposter syndrome or perfectionism, right? Or we can actually use that to inspire ourselves. So most people will talk about comparison being a bad thing. You shouldn't compare. But what if you can use comparison as inspiration? Yeah, so here I am. Oh, this person inspires me, rather than going, oh, I wish I was as good as them. So, okay, how can the gap inspire me?
Right. Yeah, I love that. It's not about attaining. If we make that objective of the future about attaining something, it's really not attaining something, it's becoming something. It's becoming part of a new reality, of a greater reality, of a grander, more fun, more glorious reality.
Yeah, and I love the word fun, right? It can be fun. It can be light. My history was things had to be so serious. Everything was life or death. Everything. Well, if I failed at this, there was something wrong with me, and that meant some sort of internal death and suffering, right? But it can be fun if we connect in with fun and lightness. Oh, I'm going to play by trying this in my life.
Oh, I so agree. I like life is a playground, is it not? It's a
Yeah,
serious playground,
absolutely.
but it is a playground if we do
Well,
that.
we get it wrong. What's the worst that can happen? We die. And guess what? That's going to happen anyway. And even when it does happen, we still exist somehow.
I agree. Yeah. That's a whole different subject, talking about death. Talking about, no, I mean, not a near-death experience, but a real death experience. And, now that I'm 75, I was at a monastery, just returned from a monastery today. And I talked to my spiritual director, and we were talking about death. And he talked about, I was saying, what takes up my time in my next 10 years? Say 75, I'm giving myself 10 more years. Now, if I got 15, that's great. But, I'm healthy. I'm a healthy 75, so we'll see. But he said, it is not about the time you have left, is not about what you do, is not about the good you may do in the world. But he says at this time in life, it's time for you to be, what was the word he used? To be filled in preparation for what death means, to come face to face with death. Am I prepared? Am I preparing myself to come face to face with death? And that may sound morbid, but I like that. I really cling to that. That this is a time. This is a time somewhat of action, but mostly of preparation, of preparing my mind and my soul and my gut.
Yeah, and it's quite possible our whole lives have been that preparation.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. And mortality, right? What are the gifts of mortality? Well, one of them is that for me, gosh, it taught me to value life. Every time a friend of mine passes away, I print a photo out of them, and I write on the back of the photo the gifts that they taught me.
Oh, that's beautiful. Really?
So a friend of mine, Jed, passed away 2 years ago, and his enthusiasm for life and his belief in other people, it was inspirational. So I just write that, and I have them here in my studio, and occasionally I'll take out all the photos and I'll leaf through the people, and I'm like, thank you, Liz, for teaching me how to love. Thank you, Jed, for teaching me enthusiasm. And it's just,
That's
that's one of the gifts of
beautiful.
mortality.
I love that. That's beautiful. That's a I don't know that I have the discipline to do that, but I wish I did.
Mm.
That's good. But
Yeah.
I do like learning from other people and inspiration. I mean, two words that run my life are influence and inspiration.
Mm.
If I can bring those to the table, then I can die a happy guy.
Yeah, and
Uh,
that's the true legacy, right? Leaving behind money is a bonus, but the
oh,
way that we are, who we are, and the impact we have on others, that's true legacy because that just changes tens, hundreds, thousands of generations down the line. That's the
yes,
true
yes,
legacy.
yes, yes. Oh my goodness, Ash, you're singing my song. I feel like I'm the only one singing the song, but I agree with you so wholeheartedly
Mm.
that that is legacy. And a big word for me is kindness. And just and so kindness is even a big word. What if we just say be nice?
Mm.
That's my goal in life, to be nice. And if I'm nice, if I bring kindness to people, that lasts. Charlie doesn't last. Charlie will go and there'll be some memory of Charlie, but what will last and what continues for generation to generation is kindness. If people are filled and inspired to be kind, then they fill and inspire others naturally because it's such a desirable trait. So that
Mm.
is legacy is not about buildings and names on walls and on plaques, but it's about unheard of. I am forgotten, but my kindness is not.
There we go. That should be on a plaque itself. That's a beautiful phrase. Was that one of yours?
Yeah, that is mine. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I
My
like
name
that.
is, but my name is forgotten, but kindness is not.
Right, right.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever put it in those words. I like that.
Mm.
I need to quote myself.
Yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful, Charlie. So beautiful.
So you know what I want to get with? I want to talk about a word that you write a bit about, but I think as I'm talking to you, it's even more true, and that's about authenticity. And I like the way you write how to live authentically without fear of judgment. Uh, that's worth a whole podcast right there. That's
Oh, it's a
that's power.
PhD and
That's
more.
powerful, bro. That's
Mm.
powerful.
Mm.
Tell me about that. Living authentically without a fear of judgment.
So most judgment is fabricated in our minds. We never know the impact we're having on people. Well, not, I won't say never. We rarely know the impact we're having on other people. However, our mind will love to judge what others are thinking about ourselves without any evidence. And it will love to pick out people from our past who were critical of us and probably don't even think of us anymore. It's like, okay, that, we are humans. We do have a human mind. We do have those structures that, you know, for me, one of the uses, right? If judgment wasn't self-judgment wasn't evolutionary beneficial, it would have been evolved out over thousands, hundreds of thousands of
Good
generations,
point.
right?
Yeah.
So there's some benefit to it.
Uh-huh.
What was the benefit? Well, the benefit was that as humanity was going through its survival phase,
Right.
we needed to be in tribes. So how do you keep people in tribes? By affecting their brains. So if they do something that's out of the tribe's values, that
Hmm.
could harm the tribe.
Right.
Therefore, be fear of being judged by the tribe. If the tribe perceives that you're harming the tribe, they're going to kick you out of the tribe, right? So we have these primal structures which are like, perfectionism, self-sabotage, self-judgment, that
Right.
hold us in the
Right.
tribe. And so that's why it can be so fearful for people to go out of their comfort zone, because part of this primal brain is going, no, no, you can't change your role in the tribe.
Right.
Because if
Right.
you change your role, the tribe will die out. And guess what? If the tribe dies out, all of humanity will die out because there's so few humans. We need to get this really right so that humanity will survive. And so we still have that ancient part of our brain that, even though we're in a thrival age where we have so many resources and the ability to change identities so quickly, we still have that primal part of our brain that's holding us in the ancient tribes.
I I have never heard. I have thought about judgment is fabricated, but not to the degree you're talking about. And judgment, the issues around judgment, the drivers of judgment are fabricated. They're not real. They were necessary, but also it is good. You can see why it lasted because it kept society together. However, we're now in a whole different sort of social mix. We're in a whole different, especially in America, and in Australia, we have an opportunity. We have an opportunity to step out of the cultural norms. As a matter of fact, I've become my inner rebel. I rebel against social norms.
Mm.
And there wasn't that many rebels back in the reptilian days because
Yeah.
you couldn't be, but that is all turned around. I think that's beautiful to live. So what does it mean to live authentically?
Once again, trusting yourself and trusting your true
Mm-hmm.
nature. And
Mm-hmm.
so in the near death experience, I have experienced my true essence of who I was. There was something there where everything else had fallen away and there was me. There's nothing else like that in the universe. That was my experience. And it's the same with you, and it's the same with the listener. Is that's unique. And the more that we can just embrace that, oh, guess what? I am the gift,
Mm-hmm.
the more beneficial that is for others.
Oh, that is beautiful. Let's
Okay.
just talk about inner critic. Yeah.
Mm. So our inner critic is here to protect us, right? And most people, when it comes to inner critic work, they say ignore it, overcome it. Whereas my perspective is no, 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 no. It is here to protect us. It has value at times. If I
Right.
just disregard the inner critic all the time, I can actually put let's say my family in danger. I can actually put my life or my future well-being and resources that could be a threat. So the thing about one of the ways our brain works, if I keep ignoring something, it goes into the subconscious. It goes where it's hard to find it. Yeah. And from there, it's
Right.
whispering. So, for example,
Yeah.
yeah, let's say, okay, there's a podcast. I want to release a podcast, and there's a voice saying, well, your podcast, nobody's going to listen, right? If I connect in with that voice and go, oh, you're saying no one's going to listen, huh? Why are you doing that? And there's a great therapeutic model called internal family systems, which is becoming more and more
Mm-hmm.
popular. It's phenomenal work.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
and that's basically, we have, instead of one mind, we have many minds, and they're all trying to have their voice and opinion around how we should operate in the world. And so one of them could be saying, no, no, no one's going to listen. If I connect and go, oh, okay, no one's going to listen. Why are you telling me that? Well, because I don't want you to fail. Ah, okay. So then I'm starting a dialogue with the inner critic. Oh, you don't want me to fail. Yes, you tried doing something like that in the past before and you failed. Ah, okay. But I'm much more resourced now. You are. Okay. Well, thank you, inner critic. I appreciate you trying to protect me, but I'm going to do this anyway, and I'd like your help. Right? And so it's opening up a dialogue with that aspect of us. And so from there, let's work together, right? Like you talked about before with working with the CEOs, right? It was a collaboration. So it's a collaboration with the inner critic, not ignoring it, because then it's just going to be in the background whispering all the time and impacting the behaviors that you want to be doing.
That's brilliant. That I think you're so right on when you're talking about a dialogue with things that are negative, like inner critic. And what we fail to do, we're creating methodologies for bypassing it or dealing with it, or moving it along. But you're suggesting something very different. You're suggesting become familiar with it. What good is it bringing? How is it trying to serve you? And if you understand how it's trying to serve you, then you can come into a loving relationship with the inner critic, and that impacts the way you're viewing these messages to you.
Yeah, and from that place, you can choose. You can choose to listen to your inner critic, or you can choose to do it your way. Whatever one you decide is the most beneficial.
Great. I love that. I think that's so strong. Ash Perrow, if I lived in Australia, we'd be friends.
Yeah, we already are friends. I really feel that, Charlie. I really do. I've really just loved our conversation so much, and can just feel we could talk for hours. I just have no doubt.
We could. Yeah. It's so good. So thank you for spending time with me today, and I'm so pleased that I got to know you, and that our listeners. Hopefully, this all turns out, and that our listeners can enjoy Ash Perrow. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Charlie. What an honor to spend time with you and your listeners. Thank you.
Thanks, man. Okay, I want to thank everybody for tuning in to the next chapter with Charlie. And until next, this is Charlie Hedges signing off. Bye for now.